Welcome back to Q-Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and yes, today we are again continuing our rewatch, but this time episode 8. Only a few more to go before the season ends. And in this episode, we actually get to feel slightly bit more sympathy towards the Huntress. But more importantly, we learn about those lengths that Empire is willing to go to stay in power, as in this episode he does walk and complete the spiral, ultimately changing the course of history. So of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and keep up to date with everything Foundation. If you haven't already, please do check out my breakdown where I talk about the journey of the Cleons and give you everything you need to know before the events of July the 11th, where we get to see our familiar faces return in season 3. So this episode actually opens up with quite a beautiful scene, and this is a flashback of the Anacreon planet, where we get to see a young Huntress frolicking in the woods before ultimately being blasted and her whole planet being bombed. And this of course is a nod back to the events at the start of the season, where they ordered the destruction and damage of both Thespian and Anacreon planet due to their betrayal and destruction of the Star Bridge. Now it's interesting here, right, and it is worth pointing out that the day in this episode who walked the spiral is Cleon the 13th, who was actually portrayed as young Dawn earlier in the series, and this is the only time we've seen him as a young boy, and this is the same version that also witnessed the destruction of those home worlds as a young boy. Now, back on the Invictus, they talk about their plan and what they want to do, and ultimately, revenge is a key motive here, driving Farah. We then get Harry 2.0 and Gail arguing about Harry keeping the plan from Gail due to her being a mentalic, and that it's just too risky to reveal such a grander plan. But of course, we do learn a bit more about that second foundation that needs to start on Helicon. And it's almost like a silent sister within the Foundation that no one else can know about, and it's just there as a backup, an extra foundation to keep the original one on track. Yes, we get to see the return of Hugo after the last episode, where ultimately he missed the Invictus on purpose to get to a mining outpost, because again, this is where he knows. He mentioned a couple episodes ago about previously working here, until all the resource essentially dried up and the support from the Empire dried up too, which then led him to sleeping in cryopods and extending his life that little bit longer. Now, yes, we then get the moment that we've been waiting for. I think one of the most powerful scenes in the series for me, as we get to see Day walk the spiral, this 170-kilometre stretch of dirt road. Now, this is where he had to take out his nanobots and also remove his protective aura, meaning that for the first time, his vulnerability to the elements is there. And of course, he feels pain, hunger, and thirst. Now, on this journey, he learns a lot from a man who seems to be walking the spiral with him. Now, it's interesting to see this friendship blossom in a way. Like, the man doesn't realise that he is Empire. But it's nice there, for almost a brief second, Day seems to view the world slightly differently, through more of a kinder lens. But when we do get to then see him fall to one knee, when I first watched this the first time round, I remember thinking he's going to collapse, he's going to fail the test, but then he's going to actually lie about it and just get back up. But no, it was nice to see that this man supported him and helped Day achieve what he needed to achieve and get back up to continue walking the spiral. Now, if we just touch briefly on the Invictus, we do get to see some more of the defences of the ship, and we learn that the crew itself activated these automatic defences and ultimately killed themselves in a way to protect the Invictus and keep it shrouded in mystery. But obviously, Sal gets past the Huntress and slips through, and in a moment where she shoots the ship and realises that some of the pressure and the things are getting sucked outside, this guy obviously ultimately dies, but then there's a quick shot where it almost looks like the ship heals itself. And we presume it's some kind of nanotech again. But it's an interesting thought because actually this little detail, does it show us that the ship has feelings? It's sick of jumping from place to place. It's almost like a torture on the ship and it just wants some help. We then learn of obviously that there are no spacers within this ship because spacers were genetically engineered for the purpose of Empire. So instead they have to manually do it, which is where Sal then formulates a plan to take the ship back to Terminus. Now back today for a second, the man who is with him on this journey does in fact die, or at least collapses. And Day can't help him. He does end up falling to both knees. But it's nice to see that Day still helps him and actually places him to the edge of the path. And I think that was a very touching moment. We then get to see him enter the pool, where we see the soulless body get in and nothing happens. It's just empty. And it's not until the end of the episode we realise that he actually didn't have a vision. But we kind of knew that was the case within this first couple of scenes that we see him enter the pool. But he does make up this amazing story about the birth root flower, where one root turns into 3 different petals or flowers. And not only does that represent the triple goddess, but also his journey through the genetic dynasty, being a clone, with dawn, day and dusk. But of course, he got this information as we saw him as young Dawn, and then again into adult life as well, watching the preparations of Demoiselle and paying attention to all of those subtle details, which was very, very sneaky, but very, very clever. Now, we then get to see Gail as she breaks the heating system within the ship on the Raven, causing Harry to actually let Gail escape and exit the ship, where she ends up putting herself into cryosleep for another 138 years as she heads towards the blue drift on the home of Synax. But also, it's worth pointing out that she got into that cryopod and within a couple of seconds, the Raven has blown up. And I thought that was a little bit dramatic, if you ask me. But of course, Harry 2.0 is with her on this journey because, again, he is now encapsulated within that knife. And then, just like at the start of the episode, our heartstrings are tugged on once more. And it also happens again as we see Demoiselle here, ultimately killing Halima, as she confirms that she is 11,000 years old and that she's the last intelligent living robot. Her skin somehow secreted the poison to end Halima's life in a peaceful yet painless way. And it just shows here that Demoiselle craves a soul and somewhat believes that she does have one, but the programming that she's been designed for the Cleonic dynasty is stopping her from reaching her full potential. And at the end of the episode, we actually see her throw a little bit of shade on Day as she confirms that seeing no vision within the mother's womb is actually a sign of emptiness, and she wouldn't want to wish that upon anyone. But of course, in this moment, she knows that Day did not see anything, but of course cannot confirm that for her own safety. And it really had me going because you can sense her raw emotion that she wants her own life. She doesn't want to be ruled by them anymore. She wants a soul, ultimately. And I think this is the first scene, the turning point for me, where, Demoiselle really changes, because in season 2, that's where she takes more of an authoritative stance on the dynasty and begins to, rein it in a little bit. And I think that, for me, where Day almost, crushes down on her faith and her beliefs, that is a big turning point. But of course, it's not about me, guys. It's about you at home. So what are your thoughts on this episode? What did you like about Day's journey through the spiral? Did you think it was quite authentic? Was there a part of you that thought he was going to be genuine or not? And how do you feel about Demoiselle and her emotions towards this luminist faith? Let me know in the comments. And of course, don't forget, we're only a couple of days away now when I bring you a little bit of a breakdown of Harry and his psycho history. So of course, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time with something new.